And a good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, Director at WEIU. Today, we're going to have a fun day. We're talking all things EIU sports. EIU Director of Athletics, Mr. Tom Michael, is here. Tom, welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.
Sports Information Director and our liaison who didn't want to be here today, but Rich Moser is here.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Rich. We wanted to be here. We left, we talk a lot of stuff in here. Usually it's about politics or government or all the different things. And when we get to talk about sports, it's always fun. And I knew that this might be a day that you could be here, Tom, so we appreciate it. I guess first thing we'll talk about is the OVC Commissioner's Cup. As we are gearing into the spring sports season, EIU's on top.
Yeah, it's an exciting time right now. I think what our coaches and our student athletes have done, and it really started. It started in the spring, and maybe you could even push it back to last year. Women's basketball finishing second in the conference, and I think it really showed to particularly softball and baseball at that point in time that hey, we can have some good things that happen, and that momentum really just carried through the summer and into the fall. And we're in first place now, but it matters in May when the spring sports are done. So hopefully we can continue to have some success. But nonetheless, for our kids, our programs, our coaches, fans, EIU in general, for us to have success with our programs, it's really good for everybody.
Yeah, I think the last 12 months, when you start with last year's success at the end of basketball with baseball and softball and track always being good, and then it really led into a fun year. More students were talking about athletics, I think, on campus this year than I can remember in the last few years. So that's got to be a good thing.
Well, and it doesn't have to be real complicated, but when your teams have success, it brings a little bit of pride to campus in every aspect of it. Yeah. So it's a responsibility, I think, that's really important for us to understand and assume. And I think the other part that we've really maybe done differently is we've talked about that a little bit more. That it's okay to talk about having success, because when you come through the budget impasse, you come through COVID, there's always excuses and there's reasons. Well, we can't have this because or whatever. But we've really just said, hey, let's change that narrative to let's go out and win. And it's not quite that easy, but yet that narrative and I think that dialogue within our coaches and our programs helps too.
And how does that carry over to your job, Rich, as you disseminate the information? Got to be a lot more fun when the teams are doing well and competing for titles.
Yeah, it definitely makes it a lot easier. And as Tom talked about it, it's easier to talk about the teams that are winning and those success stories. And when teams have success, then individuals a lot of times have success. We've had a number of players of the year. We've had a number of kids that have been All-Americans, whether it's in their sport of competition, but we've also always had great student athletes, and that's one thing we kind of pride ourselves on, in addition to leading in the Commissioner's Cup, which shows what you've done, on the playing surface. We've always led in OVC Medal of Honors and things like that, and I think to be able to talk about, in addition to the great students we have and how good they are, to say, hey, look, they're having success in the classroom. I don't know that they're working any harder, practicing any harder, but now maybe there's been some fruits of the labor are being seen when you have some success. So now coaches' message probably rings a little differently than when you haven't won any games.
Makes sense. Hoops basketball season just ended for the men and women. Both of them made it to the OVC. Talk about how you kind of gauge and judge as we wrapped up basketball here at EIU.
Yeah, I think the progress is there. It's a complicated world, particularly in that sport, maybe more so than others, just with the transfer portal. Yeah. And it seems to be a lot more movement in those two sports, particularly than some others. So, trying to keep a roster, trying to build a roster. It's the recruiting process happens so quickly. The portal opened
today, right?
Yeah, today.
Yeah.
And so, our coaches are paying attention to that, and then, how quickly do kids want to get it done? How quickly can you get it done? So that part of it is a bit more challenging maybe than it's been in the past, but happy with the progress, particularly the steps that the men's basketball team made in regards to making the tournament. And I think that if we can keep this core group of guys together, it'll be something to build on, and we can bring hopefully better recruits, better players in, and that's how you win games.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
Health is a big issue. I read where EIU that you guys led in injury minutes or something it's crazy how many injuries. Marty
there-
had this year.
Yeah, there was a time. There was a time when we had a significant number of guys out, and we had guys that missed multiple weeks. 8 weeks, 5 weeks. A couple of them had season ending. Didn't know that they were season ending at the time, but that makes it challenging too.
And the women, Macy McGloin, what a year she had, and she's only a junior, so she'll be back. Knock on wood. You have to do that.
Yeah, just a phenomenal individual. And Rich mentioned, earlier about the academic success, but I think something else that we really pride in talking with our coaches about is recruiting the right kind of individuals, and particularly from the standpoint that that they've got to treat these kids right. They've got to make sure that they give them back better than we got them. I say that all the time in our recruiting visits. That's as big of a responsibility as we have, not just making them better athletes, but making them better people. And Macy certainly is a product of being an outstanding individual, along with a phenomenal basketball player, and look forward to having her back for another year.
There you go. The Ohio Valley Conference, it's a lot of changes over the last couple of years in terms of, universities added. Are we set? Are we looking, do you have any idea right now? I mean, I know you can't probably tell me exactly the details, but do you feel more comfortable with where they're at?
Yeah. I think our membership now, we're at 11, and I feel good about those 11. I think ideally the league would be really, really good if we could get to 12, and 14 wouldn't be bad. 11's not a great number when we talk about putting schedules together.
Yeah.
But finding the right 12th member, I think, would be really important, and we do have an affiliation with the Big South with some football stuff. So if we got another football playing school, it would really, I think, solidify where we're at with the OVC.
How long is the agreement with Big South? Is it just 2, 3, or what's the?
It was
deal?
a 4-year agreement.
Deal? Okay.
Yeah, a 4-year agreement, and really there's only 2 teams left from the Big South that are participating in this, and that's Gardner-Webb and Charleston Southern. So. I think as Lindenwood comes online with their 4-year transition period, and if we can get somebody locked in there, it would because it's geographically it's good for maybe Tennessee Tech on the football side. But for us, Western, Lindenwood, SEMO even, it's not a great trip for us to have to make to Gardner-Webb or Charleston Southern.
Makes sense a lot. Football, the schedule is out. 2 Big Ten teams, 2 Big Ten. If I could talk, 2 Big Ten games next year. What's that mean for you in the athletic department in terms of finances, but also the exposure you get by playing with schools like that?
Yeah, I don't know if it's the first time ever in the history of the program. Probably first time ever that we played 2 Big Ten teams in the same season. I don't know if it's the first time we've played 2 FBS. It's the first time since I've been here in 10 years that we've done that. And it's an opportunity, quite frankly, we needed to get new turf on the field, and this is a way to help get those things done. And ideally it's not something that you'd like to do is put your student athletes out there playing Big Ten teams, 2 of them. But it's something that Coach Wilkerson and I talked about, and with President Glassman before, about how we could get to this point. And I think everybody was in agreement that that's kind of the steps that we needed to take. And with the 12-game season this year, it allowed that to happen. And so at least we're going to stagger them. We won't play them back to back or anything like that. But it'll be a good experience for our kids.
That's why I say the experience-wise. I mean, the kids got to love it, right, Rich? I mean, to go to those schools?
I think they do, and I think in particular when you look at the ones we were able to schedule this year, we're in a great footprint in terms of the opportunities to go get those games. A lot of times you'll see in our conference I always ask, like, who are you guys going to play for your football game this year? And we've had teams fly to like Oregon State or Washington or Florida State, which are great games, but as Tom will tell you, is like there's $100,000 out of whatever they're paying you right away that you just put on a plane flight to go to get the same experience. If you're Tennessee Tech, can you go to Knoxville, which is an hour? You can get on the bus, go play, and come home. That'd be us for Illinois. And then recruiting kids from this geographic region. I mean, we have a lot of kids from the state of Illinois, from the surrounding area, Chicago, that, they're going to be fighting over the number of tickets they get to go have their family come watch them play at Illinois or at Northwestern.
Where are we going to play at Northwestern?
Well, that's still up in the air.
Could that be a home game, maybe?
Well, we have offered that out there to them. That I think Coach Wilk even said that, hey, we would give up our home locker room if they wanted to come down here and play. No, it's that I don't think we're in an anxious time yet. They may be anxious up in Evanston about how they're going to handle that, but we'll get something worked out with that. But the details are still to be determined.
If you don't know what we're talking about, Northwestern is refurbishing their field up there. They don't really have a place to play or call home, and so Eastern's scheduled to play Northwestern third game of the year, and hopefully they'll find a place and it'll all work out well.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's just funny when you think about it. Beach volleyball, kind of the latest new sport. Can you tell a little bit what people can expect if they want to go out and see it?
Well, we don't play very many home matches. Not because we don't have a beach here, but we play at Sister City, and the city of Charleston has been really, really good with our volleyball program and Coach Thomas with what they're trying to do, and they've been very helpful and cooperative in regards to that. So it's a great practice facility. And when we added beach, it really, Jeff, came down to being a northern school in our conference, not particularly ideal, but what we did see is the teams that had added it had increased their performance in the standings in the league and the competitive side of it. And when Sarah Thomas and I talked about it, we talked from that regards. Will it help us competitively? And so I'm not going to say that is the direct correlation for them winning the OVC championship last year and going 28-5. But I think it does have something to do with it because it is a different skill set. They're playing 2-on-2. Everybody has to handle the ball more, and you are able to work on some different things. We still practice inside quite a bit too because we do play a court season, if you will, in the spring. So they're getting work both ways, and it's been very productive for the volleyball program.
Talking about schedules, and either of you can answer this. How do you go through scheduling these different sports? I mean, the OVC helps, but is it one-on-one with other ADs and SIDs, or how did the scheduling work for intercollegiate athletics?
Yeah, to be very honest with you, we are involved in the football side of things. Quite frankly, simply, Rich mentioned some of these other guarantee games that some in 25 we do go to Alabama, and we are actually out to like 28 in football, but otherwise the coaches handle most of the scheduling. We don't really get into those details down into the weeds. Generally speaking, I'll have conversations with Coach Simmons on his, Coach Ballant and I'll talk about, but like baseball and softball right now, Tara and Jason will put those schedules together 95% on their own. And they're working out how they want to travel, where they want to travel, how far they want to travel, what that looks like from an expense standpoint. So we really give them some latitude in regards to those things.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You learn one thing a day, right? You're a better person. Lance and O'Brien, or I get Groninger now, talk about the changes that have happened this last year and going forward, what else we can expect to see at our fields here and stadiums.
Yeah, well, obviously last summer we put new turf in over at O'Brien, and that was a much needed aspect from a health and safety standpoint. There's a variety of folks that use that space from our soccer teams. Baseball, softball use it in inclement weather type opportunities too. So it was important for us to get that done. We've got a new scoreboard, video board going up over at O'Brien this summer. That will probably be late July, August, in time for the first game. So excited about that upgrade, which will include a new sound system. And then we repainted the floor over at Groninger Arena, and I guess that's part of the new change too. Is in November we announced the name change of the arena to Groninger Arena now, and so updating that. This summer we'll also put new seating in the lower level over at Groninger, which that will be phase one of that project, and just trying to continue, Jeff, to make a difference, whether it's paint, whether it's lights, whether it's new seating, whether it's new scoreboards. But as most people on campus know, in their own particular areas, there's work to be done, and we're trying to find ways to do that in our spaces too, and because that's part of the student athlete experience. It's part of the recruitment, it's part of the retention. fun, and it's part of the overall feeling that they have when they compete here, and then when they earn their degree and they leave and become great alums.
That's a good answer there. When your coaches are hiring assistants, because it seems like assistants at our level at Eastern change a lot at all the different sports. Are you involved? Do you get involved in some of the stuff, or do you let your head coaches take care of that, or do you also try to get into the weeds a little bit there?
Yeah, it's really a situation where we'll be involved, but not going to dictate who their staff is going to be. Okay. Really going to allow them to have that latitude to ultimately make those decisions, but certainly will be involved and have those conversations and talk through it. Just feel like it's important for them to really have the space to be able to put the staff. They're the ones that are going to have to work together and make sure that comes together. Try to just be a sounding board to talk about pluses and minuses or whatever it is as they're looking at candidates, and most of them will ask us for some input on that, and we'll try to provide that as much as we can.
Rich is a sports information director, and you really are involved in every sport here at Eastern, it seems like. Take us through some of the stuff that you have to do in your job, because I know you call games, you report them, you send out stuff to the media, and you get everything ready for all the coaches and stuff. Talk about your job.
Part of it is a lot of it's become an ever-evolving job. You talk about how things have changed, and I don't even know how you would necessarily define media anymore. It's become such a rampant, expanding thing. If you ask a younger person nowadays, their version of media is social media. What I see on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it nowadays, or what do you see on TikTok, as long as that doesn't not get banned by them here in the next possible couple weeks, or YouTube, things like that. Whereas then you also still have an older school clientele, and for us, a lot of our alumni base, a lot of our donor base is still, there's not a paper locally, as you know, to get, but they still want to see something in front of them to read, whether that's a newsletter that we send out that has information, whether that's doing stuff through our website. So just trying to make sure that we're putting information out and trying to cover all of those media sources to get to as many people as possible. And routinely, no matter how much we do, there'll always be somebody that says, hey, I didn't know about XYZ, and you just kind of say, well, try to find out from them, where are they getting their information, and maybe there's a source we did miss, or maybe they just overlooked it sometimes. And I try to talk to coaches some days when they want to, are in a rush to put something out, and I say, can we wait a day or two to push it out, partly because if we're going to play on a Friday and we've got 7 events, I can put your thing out, but by the end of the day, nobody's going to remember it happened, because we had a baseball, softball, volleyball, everything like that, and trying to know how and when that's going to hit. And then, as you talked about, just doing some of the external type things like that, our big contract with ESPN Plus, we spend a lot of time working on trying to stream games, make sure they're available. You guys were nice enough to work with us. We were able to, games that we don't stream for baseball and softball, when there's conflicts, we're able to put at least a radio broadcast on. So there is content available for a fan, mom and dad at home, to at least hear or see something.
Tom, the other two big words in sports are NIL and portal right now. The portal's starting today. I mean, it just seems kind of silly to have the portal open today when you think about the big tournaments all starting right now. I know there's kids have to get ready for everything else in their lives, but your thoughts on portal and NIL and where we stand today?
Yeah, I think there's a personal side to how you feel about some of those things, and then there's a reality, so that probably gives away my personal side of how I feel about some of those things. But the reality of it is the portal is here, and for our basketball student athletes, that portal window opened today, and with NIL, it is here, and it is. I want to say slowly, but in some ways I think it's quickly transitioning into our level, and in some sports, the questions that our coaches are getting asked when they're recruiting kids is, how much playing time am I going to get, and how much money am I going to get, and that's hitting our level. Unfortunately, it's just not at Kansas or Illinois on the basketball side. So what I've talked to our coaches about, particularly on the portal, is we've got to figure out a way to make it work for us, and it work positively for us. Because if we just sit here and steam about how ridiculous the portal is, and kids can transfer now multiple times and do whatever they want and everything like that, we're going to end up not getting kids out of the portal, and we're not going to be able to do a good job. We've got to figure out, okay, if we lose kids in the portal, we better go out and find good kids in the portal too and replace that. The part probably, Jeff, that bothers me most about the portal is it seems like the high school athlete gets lost, and it's even filtered out even more maybe with that high school student athlete, because you just, you can get experience quickly, good, bad, or indifferent. So that part of it I don't know is necessarily healthy, and I could probably go on a long list of reasons why it's not real positive in my opinion, for intercollegiate athletics, but it's here and it's not going away. And the same thing with NIL. We better figure out a way, and again, you don't have to agree with it, but the reality of it is that student athletes can make money now. And even our student athletes at Eastern Illinois, it's not just the men's basketball team who won the Big Ten tournament at Illinois that are making thousands and thousands of dollars. The kids that we're recruiting at Eastern Illinois are having opportunities to make money at other places. So if we want better players, that's going to be an aspect of where they're at. And we're going to have to figure out a way to compete in that space if we want to have good competitive teams on the court.
Do you think in the future you'll fundraise with the directive to save money into those accounts?
Yeah, I think that in time that's going to have to come into play. And the crazy thing about it is that everybody will tell you, whether you're at that Power 5 crazy level, is it's not sustainable. And I don't know how it's sustainable at EIU either. But we're going to have to figure out some of those things and make that all work.
College sports are definitely changing. They're not our mom and dad's sports anymore. What about the other thing that really has been in big news in the last 24-hour news cycle is teams not accepting the NIT bid because they're either mad at the NCAA for not taking them, or just think they're too quote unquote good to go to a Division II tournament, which is, I would have never thought kids wouldn't want to play basketball.
Yeah, I think that the portal has a lot to do with that now too.
So it is.
I think because I think some programs are choosing not to participate in the secondary tournament, if you will, the NIT, because they want to get right into recruiting. It opens today, and if you're still playing in the NIT, it's difficult to prepare and then still also do this other side of scouring through, which by the middle of the week it'll be a couple thousand kids in the portal.
I said there's like 100 by 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And that's not even counting the kids that were grad transfers or that were in programs that their coach had left. That portal opened as soon as those things took place. So, Carbondale doesn't have a coach, and I've heard that there's 7 kids in the portal. That was by the weekend. There are already 7 of their players in the portal. So I think that now I don't agree with it if you're in that opportunity or you're afforded that opportunity in the NIT. I think, at least in my opinion, that you should play in that. But it's a different world, as you mentioned, that the same values maybe aren't there with what they used to be.
Well, I would add to that, the downside on that is the NCAA changed the way that format was done this year, and it took away opportunities from teams that would have wanted to go there. The old format for the NIT was a conference champion from a mid-major and lower league, had they not won their conference tournament, would automatically, in the past, go there. So they would have filled that up in the past, and now the NCAA changed that and said, the 8th, 9th, 10th team from a Power 5 conference automatically gets in, even if they're below 500, and I know there's 1 or 2 that are in that way. And so for teams turning that down when other teams would have, relished that opportunity to keep playing is just kind of I guess where we're at nowadays with some of these things at college sports.
Yeah, that's a good point, Rich.
Yeah. So where Little Rock went to the third conference, the CBI.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, and they had a great year. They had a great year, didn't win our conference tournament. And I don't know, maybe that's the appropriate next step for that program. do that. So I think that all for the third level tournament like the CBI, I think that's all very situational. But the NIT, to Rich's point, it's messed with some of the folks that are able to go to it, and then you get the ones, as you said, that maybe the kids don't want to play anymore.
One of the things I'm still confused about, and I asked this, Southern Indiana's women's team, they win the conference, they win the tournament, right? Correct?
Yep.
They don't get to go to the NCAA. Can you explain I don't know if it's the way or the rationale or kind of the thought behind all that the NCAA or the OVC does?
Yeah, it's not the OVC. It's an NCAA. It's an NCAA rule that says when you transition up from Division II to Division I, in this case, which Southern Indiana was, Lindenwood is as well, and I mentioned that a little bit earlier on the football piece, that transition period is a 4-year period. And part of that transition period is you don't qualify for postseason play. Now, you saw Bellarmine men's basketball a couple years ago hit that. You saw James Madison in football this year. They went from FCS to FBS, and I think because of some crazy rules, James Madison football ended up being able to go to the bowl game. But I think Southern Indiana and John Mark Hall, who's their AD there, Dr. Rashawn, I think they've handled it in a very first-class manner. They're not complaining like, hey, we went 17-1 in the league, we won the conference tournament, we should be able to play. They understood what they signed up for. I'm sure they're disappointed, and I'm sure that, I know they would have loved to have played in the NCAA tournament, but they understood that, this is year 2 of their 4-year transition. Now, does the NCAA look at that in time to say, does it really need to be 4 years anymore? That might be a little bit of an archaic rule, but that's part of, that's not part of, that's the reason why the NCAA doesn't allow them to be eligible for it.
And keep it on the women's basketball. It seems to be that women's basketball is the biggest growing sport right now. I know Caitlin Clark has a lot to do with it. LSU and South Carolina's success started with UConn. Talk about women's basketball, either of you, about how you've just seen it grow immensely these past, 5-6 years.
Yeah, I think it has, and I think a lot of it is Caitlin Clark, and just it comes with the media exposure that has gone with it, and I think they've there's been success, as you talked about. UConn has been very good for a long time when Pat Summitt was alive and coaching Tennessee. There was that, but there were little pockets here and there, and I think the media has embraced, and they needed maybe some stars. So you had, Caitlin Clark, you got Angel Reese down at LSU. I think they just needed some faces to put with it, and maybe NIL and those types of things have helped push maybe women's basketball more to the forefront. And I think you see it in other sports as well. I think softball has grown. I think volleyball has grown. So I think part of it is the media engine behind it. If ESPN decides that they want to help push it, or CBS or whoever, then it becomes a little bit more in the mainstream because the exposure is on your TV constantly.
We're about down to 30 seconds. What's going on this week? Thoughts of baseball, softball real quick?
Yeah, softball came off a great weekend against UT Martin. They swept them, so they're 5-1 in the OVC, so they're off to a great start. Baseball had Dayton this past weekend, and they went 1-2 against them. But baseball's at home tomorrow, and both are home this weekend. So hopefully we can get some warmer weather than it was yesterday. Get these snow flurries out of the forecast today. But spring break, but busy week yet too.
Appreciate Mr. Tom Michael and Mr. Rich Moser coming in today on this Monday for Issues and Attitudes. Keep up the great work over there.
Thanks, Jeff.
We are WEIU.